Hello, welcome back to Math 050. This is a video over 14.1, and this is going to be a section about the introduction to radical expressions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be able to find the principal square roots and their opposites of the whole numbers from 0 squared to 25 squared. We're going to approximate square roots of real numbers using a calculator, and then we're going to solve some application problems. So let's first talk about what a square root is. So we've talked about exponents so far, and let's just think of something here. Let's think of, say, I like the number 3. I like doing 3 squared. Okay, so 3 squared, we know that to be 3 times 3, and then that gives us 9. Okay, so when I want to go backwards, okay, then I would say that 9, the square root of 9, is equal to 3. Okay, so let's kind of talk about something here. All right, that's in essence what a square root is. Okay, a square root, and I'm going to write this here, a square root, I ask myself the question, what two numbers multiplied by themselves give you the number under the radical, okay? And so when I talk about that, when I think of this, problem here, this symbol here is also called your radical symbol. Okay, so when I ask this question, the square root of 9, I say, okay, what two numbers multiplied by themselves give me 9? And I know that to be 3 times 3. Okay, now the other thing I want to think about is this. I want to think about the concept of an inverse. Okay, and when I say inverse, I usually just mean the word opposite. Okay, so when I think of this, I think of okay, what's the opposite of addition? The opposite of addition we know to be subtraction. Okay, the opposite of multiplication would be division. Well, the opposite of squaring something, taking something and squaring it, the opposite would be taking the square root of that. All right, and so they kind of undo each other. Okay, and you will kind of focus on that from now, but in the future. But I want you to kind of understand that that's what that means. Okay, taking the square root is the opposite of squaring something. So what I want to do is go through all of the square roots. Okay, first one, if I take 0 squared, that means I'm taking 0 times 0. That's going to give me 0. All right, so if I take the square root of 0, I'm going to get 0. All right, if I take 1 squared, means I'm taking 1 times 1, which gives me 1. All right, so the square root of 1 is equal to 1. All right, so let's keep going. 2 squared means I'm taking 2 times 2, which gives me 4. So if I take the square root of 4, it's going to give me 2. All right. All right, so if I do, say, 3 squared, we've already done that one. That's 3 times 3. That's going to give me 9. Okay, if I take the square root of 9, that's going to give me 3. All right. If I do 4 squared, it's going to give me 4 times 4, which is 16. If I take the square root of 16, that's going to give me 4. All right. If I do 5 squared, it's going to be 5 times 5, which is going to give me 25. So if I take the square root of 25, it's going to give me 5. All right. Let's do the next one. Let's do 6 squared, which means I have 6 times 6, which is going to give me 36. Okay, so if I take the square root of 36, it's going to bring me back to 6. All right, 7 squared gives me 7 times 7, which is 49. Okay, and so if I take the square root of 49, it's going to bring me back to 7. All right, if I do 8 squared, it's 8 times 8, which is going to give me 64. If I take the square root of 64, that's going to give me 8. Okay, if I do 9 squared, that means I'm doing 9 times 9, which is going to give me 81. So the square root of 81 is going to give me 9. All right, if I do 10 squared, it means I'm doing 10 times 10, which gives me 100. So the square root of 100 is going to give me 10. All right, if I do 11 squared, it means I'm going to do 11 times 11, which gives me 121. So if I take the square root of 121, it's going to give me 11. Okay, if I do 12 squared, it means I'm doing 12 times 12. Okay, 12 times 12 is 144. So if I take the square root of 144, it's going to bring me back to 12. Okay, let's do the next set. So these numbers are going to get a little bit bigger. So if I do 13 squared, means I'm doing 13 times 13, which gives me 169. So then if I take the square root of 169, it's going to get me back to 13, and so on. Okay, 14 squared is going to give me 196. If I multiply those together, so if I take the square root of 196, it means I'm going to bring me back to 14. Okay, 15 squared, some of these I got to multiply out, is going to give me 225. All right, so then if I take the square root of 225, that's going to bring me back to 15. Okay, and so I'm not going to go all the way up to 25, but what I want you to see here is that there are some of these numbers, and they're kind of unique. All right, and what I'm thinking about are these numbers like 4, 9, 16, 25, all these numbers that we can take the square root of. Okay, what I call these numbers are perfect squares. All right. Okay, all those numbers in red, all those numbers are perfect squares. Okay, meaning that I can take the square root and get a whole number. So take the square root and get a whole number. Okay, so now let's kind of talk about something real quick. There's something about, and I want to talk about this. Okay, this is kind of an aside. All right, I want to talk about some square roots. Okay, let's find the square root of 4, and let's do square root of 9. Okay, I like that better. When I think of the square root of 9, so the square roots of 9, I want to think about something. What two numbers can multiply together to give me positive 9? Okay. Now, if I did this, I could think of this. I could take 3 and square it, meaning I'm going to take 3 times 3, which is going to give me 9. Okay. So one of my answers is 3. Now, the other thing that I want to consider here is I could take negative 3 and square it, which means I would take negative 3 times negative 3, which would also give me positive 9. So one of my square roots is 3, but the other one is negative 3, okay? And so that's what I've got. So if I ask the question, the square roots of 9, I have to find all possible solutions. So find all possible roots, okay? Now, the other thing, so then here's the part that's weird. If I just take the square root of 9, okay, it just wants me to find the positive one, the positive value of 3, okay? So it's different when it says find all the square roots of 9, meaning I have to find 3 and negative 3. But if I'm just given the square root, we assume that it just stays positive, okay? So that's a little bit different. All right, so let's go ahead and let's answer some of these questions and go through this. just so we can. So the square root of 225, we know that to just be 15. Okay, we found that out before. All right, the square root of negative 64 means that I'm going to get negative, square root of 64 is 8, so my answer is negative 8. Okay, square root of 16 is just going to give me 4. Okay, two numbers that multiplied at 16 gives me 4. All right. Okay, square root of 100, that's just going to give me 10. Okay. Square root of 441. Now, this is one we didn't go through. Now, what I can do is I can just plug this into the calculator. And the calculator allows me to just take the square root of 441 and hit enter, and it gives me a value of 21. Okay. So what I think is, interesting, and you can check yourself, okay? What's 21 squared? Is 21 squared, is that going to give me 441? So let's do 21 times 21. And that does, in fact, give me 441. So if I take the square root of that, it's going to give me 21. All right, on the last one, square root of negative square root of 169 is going to give me negative 13. Okay, and that's my answer. All right, so not too bad. So if you know and know all of these square roots, then it's pretty easy to do, okay? You can always check by using your calculator, okay? And let's go ahead and do that over here. Now, there's a lot of numbers that when you take the square root of isn't going to give you a nice, neat whole number. So what we have to do for like the square root of 43 is simply just plug that into the calculator and evaluate that, okay? And we're going to round to 3 decimal places. Keep zooming out, kind of weird. All right, and this is going to give me approximately, okay, it's not going to be an exact number, but this is going to be 6.557. All right, when I plug that into the calculator. All right. If I do the square root of 101, now it's going to be really close to 10 because the square root of 100 is 10. So, but let's just come in here, do the square root of 101, and this is going to give me approximately, all right, 10.049, okay, and this gives me 0.8. Now, what I want to do is because this fourth number, if I'm rounding to 3 decimal places, I look at my fourth number. Okay, now because my fourth number is 8, all right, I need to round this number up. But because this is a 9, I need to round that up to a 0, meaning I need to round this up to a 10. All right, so this is going to end up being 10.05 as my final answer. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this one. This one's a little bit big number here. All right, so I do the square root of 10,467. That's going to end up giving me a value of approximately 102.308. And that's my answer. Okay. All right, let's go down to these ones over here. Now, negative square root of 9,406 is approximately going to be, now I'm going to put my negative out there, and then I'm just going to take the square root of 9,406 and hit enter, and that's going to give me 96.985 after I round, okay? So make sure that you're following along using a calculator for these, okay? If I do the square root of 2/5, now what I'm going to put in the calculator is my square root symbol and do 2 divided by 5, okay? A lot of times it lets you put it in parentheses. Now, the other thing that you want to do if your calculator is different is you'd want to do 2 divided by 5. Okay, so let's do that. 2 divided by 5, which is going to give me 0.4. So 2 divided by 5 is going to give you 0.4, and then you can hit the square root button, and it'll automatically do that for you. Okay, or you could just type in the square root of 0.4. All right, whatever you want to do. All right, but eventually your answer will be approximately 0.632. All right, and that's the thing is like, if you know what your answer is supposed to be, every calculator is kind of different, so you may want to, play around with that and push buttons until you find the process of how to get this answer, okay? All right, let's take a look at the last one. Okay, negative square root of 11 over 6, so I know my answer is going to be negative, so it's approximately negative Let me do square root of 11 divided by 17. And it's going to give me negative 8.804. And that's my answer. Okay. And that's it. All right. So not too terrible. You know, use your calculator. It'd be helpful. All right. Let's go ahead and do this. Okay. On this, you know, we've got an application problem. Okay. And you can find these square roots in a lot of application problems. But what it wants you to do is find the speed of a skidding car. So after an accident, how do police determine the speed at which the car has been traveling? So they use this formula. R equals 2 times the square root of 5 times L. Can be used to approximate the speed, R, in miles per hour, of a car that has a skid mark of length L in feet. So we want to know what is the speed of the car that left skid marks of a length of 30 feet and then 150 feet. So in part A, okay, I've got 30 feet. In part B, I've got, what is that, 150 feet? So I've got this. So I've got R is equal to, what is this, 2 times 5L. So I'm going to do 2 times the square root of 5 times my length, which is 30, okay? So I'm going to, you know, just plug this into the calculator, and you can do a little bit of work before you put that in the calculator. But 2 times the square root of 5 times 30, so 5 times 30 is 150. So if I take the square root of 150, all right, so if I do that first, hit the square root, and then multiply that by 2, this is going to give me a speed of 24 point, and what do we want to do in miles per hour? Oh, let's just round it, 24.5. Let's round it to 1 decimal place, miles per hour. Okay, let's do it for the last one. All right, so I plugged this value into my formula. Okay, so my speed R is equal to 2 times the square root of 5 times 150. So let's do 5 times 150. It's going to give me 750. So 2 times the square root of 750. And so 2 times the square root of 750. And that's going to give me a speed of 54.8 miles per hour. Okay. All right, and that's it. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.